Hi, I'm Lizzie and this is Lizzie Reads, and welcome to my From Blood and Ash reading guide. So, to celebrate the release day of of Ash and Blood, which was yesterday, I thought I should do a quick little video for you if you didn't know what order or how to read any books in the From Blood and Ash universe. There is lots of information out there, but sometimes you just need a little bit of talking through, and this is my favourite series, so I really thought I should talk about it. Now, I do have a whole host of videos relating to From Blood and Ash on my channel. I will link the playlist down below where you can find reading vlogs, spoiler reading vlogs, just general chit chats. There is a lot here to take from. It's not all I talk about, but there is content when the books are released, always. I'm reading A Soul of Ash and Blood, and later on this week there will be a spoiler reading vlog, so don't you worry. But if you're looking for spoilers, this video probably isn't for you because you probably already know what order you should be reading in. Let's start with a little bit of an overview on the series. From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout is a fantasy romance series following the main character Poppy, who starts the series off in her fantasy world of Solace. She is the maiden, and the maiden is to be veiled at all times, not to be looked upon, not to be touched, and she is going to go through something called an ascension. She doesn't know what this entails, but she knows that it will save the kingdom from the Atlanteans, and the Atlanteans are a race of people that are plaguing the society. She doesn't know anything about them. All she knows is they kill people and create these zombie-like killing monsters. The whole start of the series, or the first book anyway, you don't know a lot of information. You know as much as Poppy does, and Poppy doesn't know a whole lot. Poppy is really blind into what is in her life. She feels very restricted. She isn't happy with her situation, but she is just moving forwards, taking each day by day. And when one of her bodyguards passes away, she is given a new bodyguard, and her new bodyguard is Hawk, and he is someone she's had her eye on for a little while. She's not allowed any relationships of a sexual or a romantic nature, but she is drawn to him. She's had a little moment with him in one of her little sneaking out escapades, and chaos ensues. There is so much here. It's about, in the first book, it's very much about your duty and everything that's going on. But it goes way beyond that. And if you haven't even read the first book, then I can't really say too much more about later books because it will be a spoiler for you. But there is nothing I love more than these characters. Okay, well, there's a lot of things I love more than these characters, but these are some of my favourite characters. Now, just to go into a little overview into my story of how I became obsessed with From Blood and Ash. Basically, what happened is I was just listening to the audiobook, very slowly meandering through. It's a chunky book. I was intrigued, but it wasn't, at this point, 5 stars for me. I was just enjoying, very much anticipating what was going on, but not like eating it up the way I would now. And I was just reading it. I can't remember where I got the recommendation from. I think it's because everyone was talking about it on BookTube or TikTok or wherever. This was in early 2021 when I was reading this, and I was reading it, listening through it, and then I got to the last chapter and I was very much hooked. I was powering through the last section of the book, and I read the very last line of this book, and the last line of this book just really hooked me. It really got me on board with Hawk and his character. I was immediately, right, okay, now I'm obsessed. And the first thing I did was pick up the second book, because the second book was out at this point, and I was enthralled. And then I read the second book and I wanted more straight away, that I had no other option than picking the first book back up straight away again. I have never in my life done this. I've never finished a book and immediately reread it again, or gone back to the first book in the series and immediately reread it. That's never happened. And I feel like there are some things that really draw me into this series. First of all, the timing I read it was perfect. I was going through a job change at the time. I was learning this all from home, working from home, and I think I was just, lockdown was starting to wear on me. At this point we were still in lockdown in the UK, and it felt like it was never ending. And I feel like these books have become a comfort series because I felt like I could really lean on them in that time. That doesn't mean that you're not going to enjoy them, but I do think that has amplified the way I feel about these characters. Also, another thing to note is that the writing styles for this series is very chatty. So in the sense that the main character is always asking questions, she's always sort of going off in little tangents, and takes a long time to get to the point sometimes. So she will meander through quite a lot of like internal dialogue and internal questions and internal processing to get to the main point of contention for that scene sometimes. And I love that, because that's kind of how I think. I very much go on different tangents. I think through every single eventuality. I think through things a lot. I ask lots of questions. It really annoys me when main characters who don't know a lot of what's going on don't ask anything. They just go along with it. So that is something that really endeared me to this series, and it's part of the reason why I love it. But a lot of people don't like this. So this is where a lot of the criticism for this series comes in, and I completely understand because it's not for everyone. But this series really is for me. It has everything. It blends the lines between paranormal and fantasy. There are elements from different things. There's wars, there's queens, there's kings, there's everything. There's deeply passionate, and the love that these characters have for each other, absolutely, I just love it so much. And the smut is great. It's all great. I love the characters. I love the side characters. I love the plot points. It's so hard because the book starts in the way it does. You can't talk too much about anything in later books without spoiling everything. Now, some of it may be very obvious just from the way the initial setup is, but I don't want to have any spoilers in this video, so I'm not going to say any more. I feel like that encapsulates why I personally like this series so much, but I know it's not for everyone. But if you were interested in the reading order of this series, there are currently 7 books released in this overarching world that is split into 2 series. We have the From Blood and Ash series, or the Blood and Ash series, and the Flesh and Fire series in the overall world, but they are designed to be read in a specific order. This order is release order, but I understand that when you're looking for release orders online, it can be a little bit confusing. So to start with, obviously we have From Blood and Ash. The sequel, which is in the Blood and Ash realm, still follows Poppy. That is A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, which is hands down my favourite book I've read in the last ever. This is my favourite in the series. Nothing ever tops it. I could just reread this one. This one is perfect for me. I absolutely adore it. Yes, so that is the sequel, and still following Poppy and Hawke. In the series, we have another Blood and Ash novel, still following Poppy and Hawke, and that is The Crown of Gilded Bones. So this is the 3rd release and the 3rd in the story. Next, we are moving on to the other series in the overarching world, and that is A Shadow in the Ember. This is a story following Nyktos and Sarah, and this is set in the past, but it's very, very relevant to the From Blood and Ash world. Nyktos is one of the gods, and Sarah is essentially sent to kill him, and that's how that goes. It has very, very similar vibes. There are very similarities between Sarah and Poppy, but there are also things that are very different. I didn't like this one as much, mainly because I just loved the others so much. It just paled a little bit in comparison, but still a really great fun read. And in order to read everything, in order to get the best out of the series, I would recommend reading this 4th. Obviously you can read them as separate series, but there is so much linking in. I just see them as one overall series. Then we have The War of Two Queens, which is still in the Blood and Ash world. So we've gone back to the original series here for an update on Poppy and Hawke. This one is very ram-packed, had a lot of controversial things happening between certain characters, which a lot of the stands didn't like. I loved it, but it's not everyone's taste, I suppose, but I absolutely loved it. So next we have the second book in the Flesh and Fire series and 6th overall, and that is A Light in the Flame. So this one picks back up where Niktos and Sarah left off and follows on and has a lot of information that is due to be relevant to the most recent release in the From Blood and Ash world. So this one is the next. And then released yesterday was A Soul of Ash and Blood. This is book 5 in the Poppy and Hawk story. I don't have it here with me yet because my order hasn't arrived, but I will put the picture here. And the reason this is a little bit confusing for some people is because it is in from Hawk's perspective, and it is Hawk telling the story of how they met in book 1 and some behind the scenes information, but also his perspective. Now, not to confuse anyone, this book doesn't occur at the same time as book 1. Now the reason for this is because the setup of the story is something has happened to Poppy, and in order to bring her back or sort of get her back down to where they need to be, I'm trying to avoid any spoilers, Hawk is advised to basically tell the story of how they first met to try and bring her back to herself, bring her back kind of like a coma situation, and it's told partly in the present and partly in the past. I think it's very much like a way that Jennifer R. Armentrout has decided to bring in the Hawk's perspective, because that's something that she's always really wanted to do, but also keep it relevant to the current story. So there's lots of tidbits of information and piecing together the overarching story, because there's lots of bits of the puzzle that aren't quite there yet. So I absolutely would not recommend, if you thought anyone said to read A Soul of Ash and Blood first, I would absolutely not recommend it, because it's going to spoil things that happen later. But also, I think a lot of people think you can do a tandem read, which you probably can do a tandem read. The jury's still out on like how effective that would be, but I would only ever do that as a reread, like for, you know, me, because I've reread the series so many times. I've never reread a series so many times ever. Anyway, later in the year we have Visions of Flesh and Blood coming out, and this is a compendium. I believe this will have a lot of relevant information about the story and the overarching story, and it is written by Willa Collins herself, and Willa Collins is a fictional character in the series who writes some very, very saucy books. But it's very much a compendium with lots of information, and we're not sure how this is going to look yet. Whether or not this is something you're going to necessarily have to read, or this is really for the fans, I imagine the books aren't overly complicated. I imagine you can pick information back up. There is a lot of repetition with all Poppy's questions, so I imagine it's going to be okay. But it's probably going to have some relevant information for people who want to get it all straight away. And then next year, so early spring probably, we will probably be receiving the last book in the Flesh and Fire series, which is following Niktos and Sarah, so that will wrap up that story. And then later on next year we will receive the last story in the From Blood and Ash world altogether. Now there is talks of there being another characters like story, like 2 character stories. There's a lot of speculation on which characters these will be, but there is nothing confirmed as of yet. When that is around, I will do an updated version of this video, and potentially even after reading the compendium there may be an update to this, because obviously the compendium is relevant. But I really hope you like this video. I've talked for so long. It's so easy for me to talk about these books because I absolutely love them. If there's any questions you have that I haven't sort of gone over, just let me know and I will get back to you. No problem at all, because it's my favourite thing to talk about this series. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll chat to you again soon. Goodbye.